Hello, everyone. This is Francis Donald, and I'd like to welcome you to this 25th and final session in a series of webinars on sacred number and geometry. The first 24 sessions are available on makara.us. You can see the URL address there at the bottom. If you have any questions about the GoToMeeting interface, feel free to text BL. If you'd like to help out with the reading, we can always use more readers. Raise your digital hand and let BL know. Okay, let's see. Let's switch out of talking head mode here. This will take just a second, folks. Brett? Brett?
I can't.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
I could.
That's fine. Okay, we'll start this all off with some technical difficulties. Get them all out of the way to start with. Okay, here we go. Back into full screen mode. There we go. All right. So, during the last webinar, we considered the number 10 and analyzed the tetractys held sacred by the Pythagoreans. Today, we'll look at the numbers 11 and 12. We left behind the rays, planes, and associated colors with the number 7, and the Sephiroth of the Tree of Life with the number 10. But we still have the ancient wisdom teachings, astrological constellations and houses, and the tarot available as references for numbers 11 and 12. DK gives us only one teaching concerning the number 11, but it's an important one. Right off the bat, could we get a reader to read this section on number 11?
Okay, I'm having technical difficulties myself. Brett, I can't. It won't let me. Okay, I'm sorry. Gabriella or Martha, can you please read?
Okay. Forget not that 11 is the number of the initiate, and that today it is the 11th house which is so dominant. Forget not that Aquarius, the 11th sign, is the sign of universal relationships, interplay, and consciousness. The self-consciousness aspect of the human being is being steadily expanded under this major interplay and through the forces transmitted by Uranus via the 11th house, and will ultimately give place to group consciousness and group relationships and group work. Hence the trend towards amalgamation today, towards federation, spheres of action, and the many groups which distinguish increasingly human intercourse.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, we've already learned that 9 is the number of initiation. Now we're taught that 11 is the number of the initiate. It's an interesting distinction. Numerology supports DK's assertion vis-a-vis the number 11. With the number 10, we begin using columns to depict numbers, i.e. 1 in the tens column and not in the single digits column. With this shift, we introduce hierarchy to number. But since 0 or not is a placeholder, the first true hierarchical number is 11. 1 in the tens column and 1 in the single digits column. We can apply this idea of hierarchy to spiritual principles. Thus, in reference to DK's teachings that 11 is the number of the initiate, 11 could represent alignment of the lesser with the greater one, first as a soul and personality, or monad and soul, and secondly, alignment with the group or ashram, hallmark of Aquarius, the 11th sign. In both cases, an alignment that signifies the initiate. Numerologically, 11 reduces to 2, but 11 illustrates the 2 of relationship, the inherent energy of the ray, not the two of division and separation reviled by the Pythagoreans. Possibly this is why in numerology 11 signifies the spiritual messenger, the higher one, the messenger aligning with the lesser one, the acolyte. Thus 11 also represents new beginnings. Having received the message or shift in consciousness, the disciple enters a new phase of the path. We also have a provocative reference to the number 11 in the Secret Doctrine. HPB says, astronomy knows of the fixed cycle of 11 years when the number of solar spots increases, which is due to the contraction of the solar heart. This is similar to the regular and healthy pulsation of the human heart as the life fluid passes through its hollow muscles. It's interesting to note that sunspots usually appear in pairs of opposite magnetic polarity, which could be interpreted as contraction and expansion of the solar heart. We find verification for this connection between the 1 and 1 of 11 in the meaning of the 11th arcanum of the Tarot, which is called justice. Lamed, the Hebrew word associated with arcanum, means to teach or instruct. This is related to the primary focus of the justice arcanum, the active administration of law, which brings to mind the balanced scales of justice. Indeed, balance seems to be the primary focus of the arcanum as created by Lady Frida Harris. This active administration of the law applies primarily to esoteric laws and only secondarily to human laws. It follows, then, that the sign personified by this arcanum is not Aquarius, the 11th sign of the zodiac, but rather Libra, the sign of balance and of law. In the Bota version, the blue-violet T-cross, or the ornamental collar, and the T-shaped hilt of the upturned sword signifies Saturn, which is exalted in Libra, and the yellow background refers to Libra's airy element. Okay, we can't leave our discussion of the number 11 without a passing mention of one of the most popular of New Age phenomena, the star seed, characterized by the number 1111. Star seeds, according to a typical website on the subject, are beings that have experienced life elsewhere in the universe, on other planets, and or in non-physical dimensions other than on Earth. It is said that star seeds are characterized by a sense of urgency to reconnect to their star of origin. One peculiarity of star seeds is the number 1111 constantly crops up, especially by means of the digital clock. I would probably laugh at this idea, except for the fact that I have been experiencing this phenomena myself consistently for over 10 years, but with the numbers 17 and 51 rather than with 1111. I can attest to the fact that it is a very real phenomenon. But does seeing 1111 mean that you are starborn? Well, not according to DK, who says that our humanity individualized on Earth 21 million years ago. By the way, if you notice there, it's a mention of Jack the dog. I actually have a dog named Jack, so I couldn't resist his chart. He just had a birthday. You can tell from his clothes that he's a Virgo. Anyway, I think you'd agree that he belongs to the second stage of individualization there. At any rate, who knows? Maybe there are exceptions to the born on Earth policy. After all, most of us know at least one, what New Agers call walk-ins. Okay, let's move on to the main thrust of today's webinar, the number 12. 12 is a natural, systemic, and cosmic grouping whose constitution facilitates the coming together of spirit and matter. DK says, the significance of these figures is profound in every case the figure 12 is met with. But why 12? What is it about this number that makes it the ideal number for manifestation? We can start by looking at the two digits that comprise 12. One, in the first hierarchically superior column, represents immutable, indivisible spirit, the Father aspect. One expresses itself through the Trinity. 2, in the second column, represents the fundamental feminine archetype of duality, the Great Mother. 2 manifests through the quaternary. Their pairing is best expressed by the number 12, which represents the full measure of manifestation and the interrelationship of energies within that manifestation. For 12 is the first number that can be divided by both the Trinity of Spirit and the quaternary of matter, giving us 4 triads, like the 4 faces of a tetrahedron and of the Great Pyramid. In fact, 12, whose 6 divisors takes the efficiency and organizational qualities of the number 6 to a whole new level, is the ideal number for facilitating relationship. Every astrologer knows this. For astrology, with its oppositions, trines, squares, sextiles, etc., has made a science of interpreting the meaning of the aspects within a dual, houses and constellations, 12-based system. So, 12 is unique because it embraces the integration of 3 and 4, thus giving us 1, the 3 astrological crosses made by connecting the opposing points of 3 squares, with each cross being made up of 4 signs, and 2, the 4 elements, each represented by one of 4 equilateral triangles, which each represent 3 signs, all in their nearly infinite combinations, creating the many stages on the path of return, leading to and epitomized by the 12 labors of Hercules, which represent the 12 final tests on the last pass through the 12 signs. This mastery over the cycles of incarnation is illustrated by Isis and later Mary, who represent the purified form, standing on the crescent moon, with 12 stars surrounding her head. Standing on the crescent moon, of course, indicates mastery over the sublunary realm. Michael Schneider calls 12 the framework number and points out that it has been used since prehistory as the basis for sacred structures. Egypt, whose theogony includes 12 gods and goddesses, embraced the method of reckoning by 12. In fact, the English foot of 12 inches is almost certainly comes from the measuring methods used to create the Great Pyramid. Curtis calls 12 the number of fruition of the divine Trinity, brought about by the marriage of spirit and form, and suggests that the Godhead cannot manifest in full except in a 12-fold manner. DK directly addresses the meaning of the number 12 in this quote from Reappearance of the Christ. Can we get a reader for this?
Malia,
Do you solve your problems, Bill?
Yeah. Malia, please go ahead.
There is, first of all, Christ's statement to his parents in the temple. Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business? We should note here that he was 12 years old at the time, and therefore the work with which he had been occupied as a soul was finished. 12 is the number of completed work, as witness the 12 labors of Hercules, another son of God. The symbolism of his 12 years is now replaced by that of the 12 apostles, the symbol of service and sacrifice.
Thank you, Malia. So cosmically, the symbolism of the 12 years he was talking about? This same 12-fold energetic configuration here we go. There we go. Manifested the 12 creative hierarchies, which DK also calls the 12 great orders. The symbol for the first of these hierarchies, which emanates from the central spiritual sun, is a golden lotus with its 12 petals folded. Actually, the 12-petaled lotus is a universal configuration for higher consciousness, found throughout DK's writings. It demonstrates as the logoic 12-petaled egoic lotus, cosmic mental plane, the solar 12-petaled lotus, the planetary logoic heart, also a 12-petaled lotus, the 12-petaled human egoic lotus on the mental plane, and the 12-petaled heart center in a human being. To this must be added the 12-petaled heart center in the head, and the highest head center, sometimes called the 1,000-petaled lotus, but which is actually, quote, a center consisting of 12 major petals of white and gold, and 960 secondary petals arranged around the central 12. This makes a total of 1,068 petals in the two head centers, making the one center, or 356 triplicities. All these figures have an occult significance. And, you can note that both 960 and 1068 are divisible by 12. DK tells us that the path to the 12-petaled egoic lotus begins with the opening of the 12-petaled heart center, which in turn activates the 12-petaled heart center in the head. Can we get a reader for this passage?
Yes, Scott. Please go ahead.
It is all one path, but the path of initiation has to be trodden consciously by the thinker, functioning through the central organ in the head, and from there intelligently traversing the path which leads through the three worlds to the realm or kingdom of the soul. It might be stated here that the awakening of the heart center leads a man to consciousness of the source of the heart center within the head. This in turn leads a man to the 12-petaled lotus, the egoic center on the higher levels of the mental plane. The path from the heart center to the head, when followed, is a reflection in the body of the building of the Taskarana on the mental plane. As above, so below.
Thanks, Scott. In Letters on Occult Meditation, DK says, there is a direct relationship between the two 12-petaled centers and occult meditation. He's talking here about the heart and the head. And the action of the Kundalini fire will later reveal the significance of that connection between the two. Between these two 12-petaled centers and occult meditation. Very interesting. So this path through three 12-petaled lotuses must certainly align us with the 12-petaled planetary logoic heart center, and eventually with the solar 12-petaled lotus. DK says, let's get a reader for this.
Okay, Walter, please go ahead. You're on self-mute. Thanks.
Yes. The solar system is, from the higher cosmic planes, seen as a vast blue lotus and so on down the scale. Even the tiny atom of substance can be so considered. Each petal of this solar 12-petaled lotus is formed of 49 lesser petals. The planetary lotuses differ in each scheme, and one of the secrets of initiation is revealed when the number of petals of our Earth planet, B, our planetary polar opposite, C, our complementary equilibrizing planet, is committed to the initiate.
Thanks, Walter. So I'm reading this that at every stage of evolution or the embodied unit of consciousness has some form of this 12-petaled lotus. It says, the solar system is seen as a vast blue lotus, and so on down the scale. Even the tiny atom of substance can be so considered. It's interesting, like so often you want to pick his brain about that sentence, Okay, I don't know what I just did. Now, before we get too caught up with the idea of a lotus, we must remember that the lotus is a metaphor for an energy configuration. Or as DK says, the soul is not a 12-petaled lotus floating around in mental substance, but is in reality a vortex of force, or 12 energies held together by the will of the spiritual entity, the monad on its own plane. Now we can assume through application of the law of correspondences, as above so below, that the same holds true for the 12-petaled cosmic lotuses, heart centers of our planetary logos. And DK teaches us that heart centers, which are 12-petaled, can be embodied by great beings. For example, Jupiter is the heart center of the solar logos. The Christ is the heart center of our planetary logos. And the Buddha is the heart center in the head of our planetary logos. In addition, DK describes the 12 zodiacal signs as a great cosmic lotus, but then reveals that, quote, it is a 12-petaled lotus within the 1,000-petaled lotus of the one about whom not may be said. So that gives you some idea of the scope of this being. If the entire zodiac is 12 petals within the 1,000-petaled lotus, the one about whom not may be said, we would be talking about a very high being, except for the fact that nothing can be said about this very high being. Okay. He gives us a hint as to the relation. Yeah.
Sorry. You have a comment here from Asha. She says, what would be the quantum physics word equivalent of the lotus? Is there one or not yet found?
I would say,
she adds, or astrological.
Okay, well, of course, you couldn't have two more different worlds. I wonder how many quantum physicists are also into astrology. Probably not, since it is matter on a higher level than anything quantum physicists have yet discovered. I would say that they wouldn't be engaged in any study that would reveal anything about these lotuses. Astrology is a different thing altogether. I think that the energy of one's 12-petaled lotus, which is really as personalities, we're an extension and have to some degree opened that 12-petaled lotus of the egoic, on the egoic planes. And that is revealed for the intuitive astrologer. So there's definitely a connection between states of consciousness of the jiva, the indwelling jiva, and the 12-petaled lotus. And DK is very specific about this. He talks about when this petal opens, it indicates such and such, and it would mean that the heart center, for instance, is in a higher rhythm. So you can read about this. And those types of things can be found, like I said, by the intuitive astrologer. But there's no hardwired connection, not in today's astrological practitioners. I hope that helps a little bit. Okay. Let me find my place. Decade gives us a hint as to the relationship between 10 and 12, the two great numbers of completion, and this quote on the connection between the centers below the diaphragm and those above. He says, through the relationship of the solar plexus center and the heart, the 10 of the perfect man in this solar system is lost in the consummated 12. Now, I think we're talking about a very high state of being here, not the state of where we normally move from personality orientation through the solar plexus and discipleship orientation in the heart. I think this is a much higher level. I think here being lost refers to a process called identification, undertaken by the adept. Can we get a reader for this? This is those high-end last pages of a treatise on cosmic fire where the paths beyond the solar system are described.
Go ahead, please, Asha.
These identifications eventually bring about, within the jewel, which is essentially the true spiritual unit, a momentous happening, and are undergone within the monadic consciousness after the transcendence of the atmic sheath. These four identifications are connected with the four-fold lotus of the solar logos, or with his 12-petaled heart center. This lotus is sometimes called the heart of the sun, and concerns the subjective sun. These four identifications are only undergone upon the path of earth service and are each preceded by three lesser identifications, which make a totality of 12 identifications, corresponding to the 12-petaled lotus. It will be noted by the accurate student that we are now discontinuing the use of the word initiation, which has to do specifically with consciousness, and therefore with duality, and they're utilizing a word which connotes synthesis, though very inadequately.
Thank you.
Cosmic fire.
Yeah. So this is really high-end stuff. It's I'm getting an echo. There we go. We're dealing with the cosmic astral plane here. But note, the reason I introduced this passage was note how the 12 identifications are described as four groups of three lesser identifications leading to the one of the four, right? 12 is also the ruling number of the sum of all the petals in all our centers. Can we get a reader for this section?
Yes, let's go back to
This is an amazing.
And Martha, one of them.
This is an amazing paragraph. Go ahead.
Symbolically also, if the sum total of the 48 petals of the 5 centers is added to the 96 petals of the center between the eyebrows, the number 144 appears. This number signifies the completed work of the 12 creative hierarchies, 12 times 12, and thus the bringing together of the subjective soul and the objective body in perfect union and at one mint. This is the consummation. To these figures, 144, add that of the number 1,000, the number of petals in the lotus of the head center, and you have the number of the saved in the book of Revelations, the 144,000 who can stand before God. For the three ciphers which are found indicate the personality. When man has completed within himself the great work, when the number 144,000 is seen as symbolizing his point of attainment, then he can stand before God, standing now not only before the angel of the presence, but before the very presence itself.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Wonderfully read. This is a kind of Rosetta Stone for sacred geometry, for understanding number. There's two statements that stand out in this, what is to me an amazing paragraph. First of all, 12 times 12 represents the perfect union and one-ment of the subjective and objective, of the soul and body, or personality. And 2, the 3 ciphers or zeros represent the personality. We can assume that the zeros relate to, or possibly, relate to the physical, astral, and mental bodies. I hope you can appreciate how much more is here indicated by the number 144,000 than a mere sum. We gain through this one example real insight into the esoteric significance of number. So this is not about there being specifically 144,000 individual units who are, quote, saved in Revelations. It's about the condition that one has to, the state of consciousness that one has to be in. 12 times 12, the purification and perfection of the subjective and objective, and that being applied to the 3 bodies of the lower quaternary. That's what the number signifies, not a specific sum. Now, possibly in addition, it also has meaning as a specific sum. But first of all, he makes a point of telling you this. This is the kind of jewels that are hidden within the subject matter. But what he's giving you here is a template for understanding number here. This is very important. Okay, let's take a look at the 12th Tarot Arcana, the Hangman, one of my personal favorites. The letter associated with this arcanum is Mem, representing the feminine principle, the element of water, and the planet Neptune. Esoterically, water represents the reflected image of the divine, or spirit in form, which the hangman embodies. The title Hangman means suspended in mind, or suspended mind. We have in this figure both the triangle and the square, 3 and 4 of spirit and matter, whose union is represented by the number 12. The hangman's red legs, indicating the number 4, are cooked, as in the emperor's, as is the emperor's, the 4th arcanum. Notice the numbers here. Also, his hair is white, like the emperor's, representing wisdom. It's also white in the hermit, the Virgo card, on the number 9. The hangman's upper garment is blue, like the robe of the high priestess, which represents the moon. His crescent-shaped pockets represent the sublunary realm into which he is being suspended. And the 10 silver buttons are the 10 Sephiroth. Paul Foster Case says he is the Ancient of Days, reflected into the incarnate life of personality. One of the old occult names of the one life is Lux, which is Latin for light, and also an occult reference to the Hebrew word Adonai, or Lord. Lux, as many of you know, is emblazoned on the cover of every blue book. As the 10 Sephiroth suggest, the hangman's reversal reveals the path. Again from Case, silent, unostentatious reversal of one's own way of life, combined with perfect tolerance of the ways of other people, is the method of the practical occultist. This arcanum naturally follows the balanced midway point represented by the 11th arcanum. The personality and soul first achieve a balanced influence. Then the inner recognition of the words, not my will, but thine be done, begin to truly guide the disciple's actions, and the great reversal in the zodiacal wheel takes place. Case describes this shift as, quote, the submission of the personal consciousness to the direction of the universal mind. We see this also in the unconscious submission of the fool, who's about to step into the abyss, becoming the conscious submission of the magician, who receives all his power from above. And also we see this from the lion and the strength card, who recognizes and submits to a higher authority than his own personal strength. This state of consciousness, literally embodied by the hangman, is exemplified by the enlightened Piscean, the 12th sign of the zodiac. Could we get a reader for this?
Sure. Malia, will you please read?
In Pisces, we have the fusion or blending of soul and form as far as man is concerned, producing the manifestation of the incarnated Christ, the perfected individual soul, the completed manifestation of the microcosm. Thus, the greater and the lesser polar opposites, the human being and God, the microcosm and the macrocosm, are brought to their destined expression and manifestation.
Thank you, Malia. Okay, let's take a look at how 12 manifests in religion and mythology. In ancient Greece, there were 12 principal gods in the Olympian pantheon, as well as 12 Sibylline oracles. I've shown 6 here. There were 12 rooms in Valhalla, and 12 seats surrounding the throne of Odin, who had 12 sons, as did the biblical Jacob, who were the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were often 12 disciples accompanying the great masters throughout history, the 12 apostles of the Christ, the 12 disciples chosen by Muhammad to spread his doctrine, the 12 first companions of St. Francis of Assisi, the 12 disciples of Confucius, the 12 disciples of Mithra, and the 12 descendants of the Shiite prophet Ali. In Buddhism, there are 12 nidanas, or causes of being, and in Hinduism, the sun god Surya has 12 Sanskrit names, each intoned as a mantra. In Revelations, there are 12 gates of the celestial city, revealed by Revelations 21:12. 12 kinds of precious stones in that city, and from the tree of life, 12 crops of fruit per year, one in each month. The list of 12s in the Bible is prodigious. There are 12 sons, priests, names, stones, branches, explorers, oxen, sacrifices, silver bowls, curses, springs, animals, tributes, articles, promises, shepherds, winds, angels, patriarchs, and degrees of humility. And this is just a few examples. According to one source, 12 is used 187 times in the Bible. And that's just in the Bible. The egg of Osiris contained 12 white pyramids, symbol of good, and 12 black pyramids, emblems of evil, introduced by Typhoon. There are also 12 verses of the Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, summarizing all of the teachings of the Hermetic tradition. There are 12 animals in the Chinese horoscope, and 12 lunar years in the Chinese lunar calendar. And finally, in Japanese cosmology, the creator sat on 12 sacred cushions. Okay, let's get into our analysis of the, well, first of all, in all these examples, the 12 is the full consummated expression, as DK calls it, of the one. So, let's get into our analysis of the 12-sided figure called the dodecahedron. After a few basic observations, we will be considering the dodecahedron in relationship to the other 4 Platonic solids because, as you'll soon discover, they work as a unity. Human awareness of these shapes stretches back into prehistory. Keith Critchlow, in his book Time Stands Still, presents convincing evidence that they were known to the Neolithic peoples of Britain at least 1,000 years before Plato. This is founded on the existence of a number of spherical stones kept in the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford. Of a size one can carry in a hand, these stones were carved into the precise geometric spherical versions of the 5 Platonic solids. At this point, okay, DK describes the first step of his recommended analysis as simply its exoteric consideration, line, form, and color. At this point, we're not looking for meaning or significance, but rather for a tabulation of physical attributes. We'd love to have you participate. When called on, briefly describe a single physical attribute. Okay, I'll start. By the way, as others and I describe these attributes, consider preparing for the next step of our analysis by imagining their possible meaning and significance. You may want to jot down the ideas that occur to you in order to share during the next segment of the analysis. Okay. The dodecahedron is one of 5 Platonic solids called regular polyhedra. It has 12 pentagonal-shaped faces, 20 vertices, and 30 edges. The determining angle of a pentagon is 72 degrees. Okay, any further observations? What other physical characteristics do you see? Yael, do we have any takers?
Not yet. They're thinking.
Okay.
Go ahead, please, Walter.
Yes, the dodecahedron is intimately related with the icosahedron as its dual, or what you get when you connect the center of each face of the dodecahedron as a new vertices.
Excellent. That's entirely correct. Do you remember that we talked about the idea of the dual, especially when we were looking at the cube and the octahedron some webinars back? And indeed, the dodecahedron also has a dual, as do all the Platonic solids. And as Walter pointed out, it is the icosahedron. We'll be looking at some illustrations of that shortly. Terrific. Thanks, Walter. Anyone else?
Not yet.
Don't be shy. Jump in there. It's, in some ways it's harder with 3-dimensional figures than with 2-dimensional figures, like with the nonagon, with all its many shapes and angles. And there's a kind of simple elegance to these Platonic solids, and there's not a lot of detail to talk about. Nonetheless, we'll talk about it. Anybody have any thoughts, any more about this? No?
Walter, go ahead again.
Oh yes, in the continuing relating this to other Platonic solids, you can also intimately connect the dodecahedron to the cube, where if you notice, you can select 8 of the vertices of the dodecahedron, and they form a cube. And there's several different cubes that can be composed or seen inside the dodecahedron.
That's correct, and you'll be seeing illustrations of that as well. And in fact, if you take any pentagonal face and connect to, let's see, I get to use a cursor in this. Can you see that cursor? Theo, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So in PowerPoint, they allow you to use a cursor as opposed to, oh, there it just disappeared. Oh, here we go. So if you connect, say, this point with this point, and then go from here to this, down to this point, and from there go down to this point, and from there go over to this point, and then back to your original point, you forms a cube. And there's, as you can see, as Walter was saying, there's many cubes, because you could also start by going to this point, or you could start by starting here and going over to this point, and then going up to this point, down to this point, and then back to this. Each one forms a cube. I have some illustrations of this a little later. Okay, great. Somebody's been reading up on the dodecahedron. That's terrific. Okay, you guys have had a lot of time to think.
We have a couple of more. We got a couple of more now. Helen says each line is the same length.
That's right. That's an important observation. Yeah. They have all the same angles and all the same line lengths. That's correct.
And
anyone else?
Yes, go ahead, please, Gabriella or Martha.
This is kind of weird, but as I look straight on this face facing us, the pentagon, and then the upside down pentagon directly behind it, more pale, putting those together visually, it makes a 10-pointed star, which is, kind of virtually ghost-like suspended with a 10 in the middle of the 12-faced figure. It just seemed kind of ghostly and magical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my kind of weird. I like that. And every one of these faces, and there are 12 of them, you would have that phenomena, right? If I could turn this in space for you, you would have that same phenomena looking down through every face, which brings up another point, which is this is entirely symmetrical. No matter which way you turn it, it's going to appear the same. So you would have, since there's really only 6 of those dual possibilities that Gabrielle was talking about, so you would have 6 tens in that. Good point. Great. Anyone else?
Helen says each face appears to be rotated 1 point from its opposing face.
Each face. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. As you go around. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by one. You mean one vertex. Oh, yeah. I see what you mean now. Yeah, it has to do with the orientation of the faces to each other. Good. Anyone else?
Nothing else that I see.
Okay. Then we will move ahead. The dodecahedron is formed by connecting 20 equally spaced points upon a sphere. 3 spheres can be drawn in connection with the dodecahedron, as with all the Platonic solids. The smallest sphere touches the central point in each of the dodecahedron's faces. The middle sphere touches the central point of each of its lines. And the largest sphere touches each of the vertices, and thus contains the dodecahedron. Every face of the dodecahedron is parallel to one other opposite face, giving us 6 pairs of opposites. Each of these parallel faces point in opposite directions. And that's the thing actually Gabrielle pointed out, because we were looking in that first, go back. We're looking at this, we're looking through 2 parallel faces, right? So you can see that they point in opposite directions. Okay. When viewing a dodecahedron so that it has a top and bottom face, The 10 remaining faces are connected by a common zigzag line. Very technical term there. The top 5 of these faces point downwards, and the bottom 5 faces point upwards. When viewing a dodecahedron so that one of the vertices is at the very top, there will also be a vertice at the bottom, thus allowing one to create a vertical axis that bisects the central point of the figure, connecting any other 2 opposing vertices pinpoints the central point. There are 10 such equally spaced axes passing through the central point and connecting the 20 vertices. Sorry, you're going to have to look at this a minute longer because it took me about 30 minutes to make it. When viewed with a vertice at the top and bottom, 3 pentagonal faces merge at the top point. You can see that on the right. And 3 at the bottom point. That would be on the opposite side. Leaving 6 alternating pentagons forming the equator. Each of the 12 faces connects to 5 other faces. These 6 faces form exactly half the dodecahedron. Each of the 20 vertices has 3 equal angular edges radiating from it. Each edge connects to 4 other edges, 2 radiating out from each end. If we connect the endpoints of these 4 edges, and this is what Walter was pointing out, we connect the endpoints of these 2 edges here. Let's look back again. So if we connect the, let me get my cursor back. Oh, it's so cool to have a cursor. We connect the endpoints like that. A square can be drawn on the surface of the dodecahedron. There are 6 such squares, related squares that is, which together form a cube. Thus, it is that a cube can be placed inside a dodecahedron in such a way that the 2 figures have 8 vertices in common. And inspired by what Walter said, I would have to say that there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Am I really only getting 4? It seems like there'd have to be 5. Yeah, there has to be 5. There's 5 possible of these cubes. 5 possible cubes that can be drawn inside of this. Just, basically skipping a point and starting from each point. The one Platonic solid we've not looked at in this webinar, and also I'll have to credit Walter for this, is the icosahedron. It has 20 regular faces, regular triangular faces, 12 vertices, and 30 edges. Notice that these are the same numbers as in the dodecahedron, but with the numbers of the faces and vertices reversed. This is a sure sign because this inversion indicates that the icosahedron is the dual of a dodecahedron, and vice versa. A figure's dual, you may remember, is derived by connecting the midpoints of each of a figure's faces. But the connection between these 2 figures runs even deeper. For if we join the vertices of an icosahedron internally, they form a dodecahedron within the icosahedron. Now, this is different than a dual, and after your eyes get adjusted to all this complexity on the figure on the left, it's actually not that hard to read. The kind of lighter dotted lines that emanate from each point of the outer icosahedron. Remember, the icosahedron has triangles. Dodecahedron has pentagons. So if you follow those dashed lines, you'll see that just in their crossing, they actually form a dodecahedron. So an amazing fact that's made more so by the fact that the same thing is true if you follow the projected lines of the dodecahedron. It creates an inner icosahedron. You see it there in the very middle with the triangular faces, right? This is different than a dual because these aren't actually touching the faces, but they have some very important phi relationships. So the little figure on the right is a drawing of how that just two of them relate to each other. Okay. Also like the dual, there is an infinite progression of these two figures, both inwardly and outwardly, all sharing a common central point. That's just the nature of a dual. Now, interestingly, if we join each point of, wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, here we go. So if we join each point of the 12 points of the icosahedron, that's the outer figure, with 12 particular points of the dodecahedron, an octahedron is formed. Now, I know this, it first seems incredibly complex, but if you just look at the dotted line that starts at the top point of the icosahedron, the outer figure, and follow it down, you'll see that it eventually passes through the blue outlined dodecahedron and forms one line of the red figure, which is an octahedron. Now notice that as it continues to progress, it ends at the bottom left corner of the dodecahedron. So the point and the kind of the miracle of this is that the combined effort of the icosahedron and the dodecahedron form this octahedron. And if you go, that's actually all that's happening. If you follow around, say, go around to your right, clockwise, and you'll see, again, I keep forgetting I can use the cursor. It's so cool. If you start here, see what I just described is starting up here, and you come down, and it forms this edge of the octahedron, and then ends in the dodecahedron. Here, starts in the icosahedron, forms this line of the octahedron, and ends in the dodecahedron. Here, starts, goes through the octahedron, forming that line, and ends in the dodecahedron. So you get the point. That's actually the only thing that's being illustrated there. So now, if we use each face of the octahedron as the base of a tetrahedron, remember the tetrahedron, it's made up of 4 equilateral triangles, we get a star-shaped figure that is actually 2 interlaced tetrahedrons. Remarkably, the outer 8 points, stay with me guys, I know there's a lot of technical language, but the outer 8 points of these 2 interlaced tetrahedron coincide with the 8 points of the dodecahedron not used to form the octahedron. Now that's a mouthful, but basically what it's saying is that this figure, this double tetrahedron, and you see it in yellow, coincides or is touching 8 of the 20 points of the dodecahedron, and the other 12 points were used in this construction. Okay. Even more remarkably, the 12 vertices of the internal icosahedron, that's the figure in the very center, intersect the edges of the octahedron at the point that marks the golden section of these edges. We'll see a better illustration of that in a little bit. Now, If we draw lines joining the 8 vertices of the interlacing tetrahedron, that's the interlaced tetrahedron is the yellow figure on the left, we'll find that we have constructed a cube. This cube fits precisely within the dodecahedron and is, in fact, the same cube created by connecting the endpoints of the 4 edges shown on the right. This construction, called a lesser maze, includes all 5 of the Platonic solids and a systematic, infinitely repeating relationship. It takes a little bit to get used to these, how they interrelate, but once you get a feel for it, it's pretty amazing. Now, if we assign a value of 1 to the length of the edge of the cube, enclosing the dodecahedron, we'll find that the length of the edges of that dodecahedron are 0.618. 1 to 0.618 is the golden mean relationship prevalent in the growth of so many natural forms. The length of the edges of an enclosing icosahedron are 1.618, also a golden mean relationship. Okay, a couple of, so you see we've got actually 4 golden mean relationships indicated here. The length of the edges of an icosahedron enclosed by the dodecahedron, that's the little one in the middle, are 0.382, also a golden mean relationship. And that's the difference between the icosahedron dodecahedron if they're in the relationship of a dual, and if they're in this relationship with the projected interior lines, because through the projected interior lines you get these 5 relationships. Very important. Okay, a couple of interesting mathematical observations. As we know, 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 12, and 3 times 4 times 5 equals 60. Multiplied together, these two sums give us 720, the sum of the angles in a tetrahedron. And this chart kind of sums up the angles of each of the Platonic solids. So they're all subject to this law of the multiplication of 3 plus 4 plus 5 times 3 times 4 times 5. They're just in different multiples of that connection. It's kind of interesting. Okay, let's move on to meaning. Decay separates the next stage of our analysis into 2 parts as follows. Can we get a reader for this short section here?
Sure. Let's go with Scott, please.
The comprehension in the astral or emotional body of its quality. The reaction of a sensitive response to the impact of its qualitative nature. Conceptual consideration of its underlying idea, of what it is intended to teach, of the intellectual meaning it is intended to convey.
Thanks, Scott. You know, we tend to pass over the importance of this first component. You know, these 5 stages of analysis come from a Glamour World Problem, and he emphasizes the importance, not only the importance, but the essential fact that you must be able to have an experience, a feeling quality experience of these figures, or they just simply don't stick. They don't matter. So, you know, when you're considering this in this section, open yourself to the impact of this figure, rather than just an analysis. I won't say just, because they're both equally important, but we tend to kind of gloss over the first stage of this. So in the interest of time, we'll consider these 2 steps at the same time. And when sharing, you're welcome to speak to either the emotional or conceptual aspects of the dodecahedron. So, considering our list of physical attributes, which is quite lengthy here, anybody can read that, has younger eyes than I do, as well as those ideas you've put forth, what quality, significance, and or meaning can we ascribe to the dodecahedron? Here's one example each based on quality or significance and on conceptual meaning. In terms of significance, when I look at the dodecahedron, I can't help but reflect on the fact that even knowing of the existence of this figure was a secret of initiation in ancient Greece, especially among the Pythagoreans. It was not a figure that was objectively available. In terms of conceptual meaning, related to the above statement, tradition associates a tetrahedron with fire, the octahedron with air, the icosahedron with water, and the cube with earth. Plato mentions, quote, a certain fifth composition used by the Creator in the making of the universe. Thus, the dodecahedron came to be associated with that fifth element, ether or prana. Okay, any further ideas on the quality, significance, and or meaning of the dodecahedron?
Helen?
Hang on a sec. As you're thinking about this, you may wish to consider our list of physical attributes. I'll give you a minute to review. Just raise your hand when you're ready. But it sounds like somebody's already ready. Helen says,
inclusiveness.
That's interesting because, you know, that's, to me, seems to be an example of the first, the sense of significance or the impact of the figure upon your consciousness. Would you like to say anything more about that? You know, why does it, is there a why in there as to how it makes you feel inclusive?
I've unmuted you if you'd like to talk.
It's okay. Helen, are you there?
Yeah, okay, there, go ahead.
Hi, Helen. I'm just wondering, is there some aspect of the figure that makes you feel that it represents inclusiveness, or is it just a feeling? That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, she says she has no mic, and it's just a feeling.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts?
Yes. Gabriella and Martha say a symbol for a nature-based law. Is it, phytotaxis, where the leaves equally grow around a plant stem as it evolves? That's what I'm reminded of here. All the equal faces, line lengths, etc., and implied torque or spiralizing out with its contained figures.
Yeah, that's, you know, one of the things about this figure is that, you know, I showed you the five relationships, but two of those five relationships are inherent to this figure. So if we, my cursor. Okay, if we just go from here to here, that's the length of, if you remember, a cube, a line of a cube, right? In comparison, so we call that 1, in comparison to this length, which is 0.618. So inherent in a pentagon is the phi relationship. So yes, in that sense, it, in a sense, represents in and of itself, without even needing the icosahedron and the other Platonic, it represents the generation into form of nature. Good call. Someone else? Anyone? Anything else?
No, that's all I see right now. Oh, okay, hold on. We got some.
Okay.
Please go ahead, Iris.
Hi. I don't
Hi,
know,
Iris.
but I'm just reminded. It just speaks to Christ consciousness for me.
Mm.
Thinking of the
Yeah.
center of the 12 and all of the different geometric figures within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I know exactly what you mean. It's. I think the highest. Um, you have to consider it in with the icosahedron. They are, in a sense, one thing, and the two together suggest the relationship between soul and personality, for instance. So yes, um, I feel that way too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead, Scott.
Relating the icosahedron with the dodecahedron, the fact that the icosahedron is made up of triangles, which are essentially male. This was made up of male-female, the dodecahedron. So the icosahedron then is the Purusha aspect, the male, and the dodecahedron, the Prakriti, the female, the mother.
Yes.
And this,
Yes.
the fact that you have the water on the outside instead of ether, suggests that what we have inside, starting with the dodecahedron in, is a representation of the cosmic physical plane, which is surrounded by the cosmic astral, indicated by the icosahedron. So there's a mother, father, father, mother combination there. It goes back and forth, as you know, inside and out.
Yeah. And what's so cool is that, since duals work in both directions, you don't have it to where one is dominating the other. It's a continuous outflow of the two energies in combination. It's one of the beauties of it. Thanks for those comments. That's terrific. Yeah, the Purusha Prakriti, folks. The idea of the male causal and the female creative aspect, right? This is definitely the creative female aspect, the Prakriti, the creative quality of deity. So in that way, it could be associated with Brahma. It's a kind of Shiva-Brahma connection. Okay, thank you. That's one of the most important aspects of this. Anyone else?
Yes, got a couple more here. Please go ahead, Walter.
Yes, I get a feeling of a synthetic sense of as above, so below, where not only does the dodecahedron have all the Platonic solids inside of it, but there's also other smaller dodecahedrons, and so you have this infinite going in and infinite going out of additional dodecahedrons that really shows the as above, so below.
Yes, remember DK's quote. Thanks, Walter. Yeah. Remember DK's quote about the 12-petaled lotus and the progression going into form of this all the way to the atom of substance. So, this is another way of looking at a 12-petaled lotus. In fact, energetically, it seems more accurate because it has a central point, and that central point is in an equal relationship to all its elements, right? So energetically, I think, this is maybe more indicative of that energetic quality that's usually portrayed as a lotus. And as Walter was saying, as you pass, and also Scott, as you pass from dodecahedron to icosahedron to dodecahedron, you're moving into the substantive world, right? And it's interesting too because you can see it in both directions. Possibly it's moving out that takes you to the atom of substance, and that the Godhead is actually the point in the center, and therefore this smallest dodecahedron, icosahedron jewel, the one surrounding that point, would be the most elevated. It's just another way. Not one or the other isn't correct. It's just a way of looking at it. But bigger isn't always, the indicative of greater consciousness. So it's good to keep awareness of that. Great. Anyone else? Let me catch up here.
Yes, we have several here going. This one's my favorite. Gabrielle and Martha say, it's about the one of whom not may be drawn. Bigger than all these figures and containing them.
Yeah, you would be really hard-pressed to draw this, even though I went through... Lawler actually shows you how you can draw this thing. But it's there is some method to the seemingly impossible task of being able to draw this. But yeah, you can imagine how tough it would be. I generated all these figures in a 3D program, so they're truly accurate based on the projected tools that are available in this 3D program. Yeah, the one about which not may be drawn. Huh? Anyone else?
Yes, we have
You
several.
only get a half a credit for that, by the way.
Oh, no, they should get a good one. Jan says the 4 of personality and the 3 bodies plus the 4 of the monad and the spiritual triad in perfect equilibrium in the 1. 4 plus 4 plus 1. 1, 4, 4, and 144,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, the 12 times 12 takes you straight into this. And the Greeks felt that this really was the highest created God. And so, therefore, it multiplies itself, right? As Walter was saying, it's infinite number of these dodecahedrons inherent in the geometry of it. So, yeah, 12 times 12 is right there with this. And you can also do it with the points of the icosahedron. So you could look at it as 12 points times 12 faces. The yin-yang, the causal and the effect, creating the manifested world. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
Scott, please go ahead.
A couple things. Since each pentagon represents essentially a human, it's a man with 5 outstretched limbs in the head. You can see a reason here we have 12 of them, and you can see a good reason to have 12 members of a jury. So 12 makes the dodecahedron and a jury. Also, looking at this big blue cosmic soccer ball made up of pentagons, I have to wonder, trying to apply it as we do to the 12 signs of the zodiac, which have a particular order, and 12 labors of Hercules, which definitely have a particular order. Where do you begin on this? And how do you go about to find the upper 6 you can see and the lower 6, the opposites, and so forth? Interesting how you apply those particular orders to this figure, which can be rotated any which way and start any way you like.
Yeah, and it says something about the arbitrariness of the beginning and ending. I mean, we think of the signs, for instance, beginning with Aries and ending with Pisces, but we also know that they begin with Pisces and end with Aries, on the non-reverse wheel. And you could probably make a case for beginning and ending in any sign, for instance, with Cancer, through incarnation, because that begins the journey. So in a way, this is stressing that point, that it's more accurate in a sense to look at it this way than as lining up 12 dots in a row, or even as a band going around, because this adds that three-dimensional quality. So, we normally think of astrology as, 12 stations on a ring, but this even ups the ante in that way. But and it's something I'll be describing in a minute about. There is something about the astrology and about the astrological signs that's perfectly illustrated by this, but I don't want to spill the beans yet on that. So. Good one. Anyone else?
Yes.
Significance?
Anne has added a couple of things here. She says, it gives me a sense of creation. It is said that our universe is such a shape. And then she added the 12 gods of Olympus.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same idea, which is that instead of lining them up in a row like that slide I showed when I was going through the mythology and religion, the gods all lined up in a row. That isn't it much more accurate to look at these as faces on the one, thus emphasizing their unity, But that's the very point of this, is that it takes the undifferentiated sphere and allows the energy of the sphere, which is, as Scott was saying, Purusha, pure spirit, to manifest through 12, which is the ideal number of manifestation. Yeah, very good. This is how I would see the gods and goddesses, absolutely. Anyone else? Other observations before we move on?
That's all I've got right now for comments and no hands.
Okay, well, let's move on because we're a little short on time anyway. Okay, as we've seen in our study, the number 12 is the consummate organizational principle, as it allows the Trinity to manifest into the fourfold realm of form. When we combine this understanding with the fact that all bodies of manifestation are in essence spherical, we might ask which forms embody both the qualities of the sphere and the number 12. Well, the answer is that there are two such figures, which are deeply interrelated. And we've gotten into this discussion. Walter introduced it. The icosahedron and the dodecahedron. In the icosahedron, 12 is exemplified through the points. In the dodecahedron, 12 is exemplified by its faces. Okay, DK speaks of the astrological constellations, and now I'm getting to what Scott and I were discussing. He speaks of the astrological constellations in terms of 6 great axes of opposite signs that, though in opposition, are essentially of the same nature. If we consider the fact that all units and groups of units in manifestation are in essence spherical, the dodecahedron icosahedron dual can be seen as the perfect form to describe these 6 astrological axes in terms of their energetic interrelation. The 12 points of the icosahedron seem to represent the unmanifest source of these constellations. This is also recognized by Scott, and this is the idea of Purusha. Whereas the 5-sided faces of the dodecahedron might represent the manifest energies of these constellations in such a way that they are accessible to humankind. 5 faces, 5-sided face having very specifically to do with humankind. For the same reasons, the dodecahedron-icosahedron dual might describe the relationship between a master who stands at the central point and his 12 senior initiates, a relationship, as we've seen, that has occurred throughout history. Like the constellations on the ecliptic, these groups were physically arrayed as a circle around a central point. But because all such groups are energetically spherical, their more essential configuration is possibly better exemplified by the dodecahedron-icosahedron dual. The Greeks give us some verification for this hypothesis. For along with the tetractys, the dodecahedron was regarded with exalted esteem by the Pythagoreans. Plato, who externalized many of the Pythagorean teachings, stated it was the highest deity itself which built the universe in the geometrical form of the dodecahedron. And its, quote, first begotten was born of chaos and primordial light, which according to HBB was the central spiritual sun. So this interpretation elevates the dodecahedron, which I believe was esoterically known by the Pythagoreans to be the dodecahedron-icosahedron dual, to the level of the third logos, the universal creative principle. HBB says, the esoteric meaning of the word logos, speech or word, verbum, is the rendering in objective expression, as in a photograph, of the concealed thought. The logos is the mirror reflecting divine mind, and the universe is the mirror of the logos. And think here of the importance of the 12th arcanum of the Tarot, where you have the same idea of suspended mind, right? So, you know, there's some fundamental concepts that reverberate through all these methods of describing the importance and the esoteric meaning of number. Okay. Unmanifest, the logos is neuter. Manifest, it is seen as androgynous, or male-female. Together they form both the unseen and the visible space. I believe this highest of dualities is well symbolized by the dodecahedron-icosahedron dual. But this only addresses two of the five interrelationships in what some esotericists call the lesser maze. L. Gordon Plummer, author of The Mathematics of the Cosmic Mind, in this illustration, which I enhanced in Photoshop, is from that book. He believes that the combined energies of the dodecahedron-icosahedron dual create the monad of a human being, represented by the octahedron. So going back to this method, which, you know, now it shouldn't be, you know, quite so difficult to comprehend. The octahedron in the center, now, can you see it? It looks two-dimensionally like a six-pointed star, but if you see it as a figure that you're looking through, you can see it as that double pyramid of the octahedron. Okay. So Plummer says the logi of Brahma, which can be described as a great light emanating certain rays or portions of itself, expresses itself in a 12-fold manner. The 12 points of the icosahedron may properly be taken to represent these 12 logi, radiating their own 12 energies to form the highly complex entity that we call man. This process is represented in the joining of the points of the icosahedron with those of the dodecahedron, forming the octahedron, which is taken to represent the monadic essence of man. Now, this is just one theory, but it's a good one. This idea that the macrocosmic creates the microcosmic through their combined effort. So, in this dual configuring action between the icosahedron and dodecahedron, we bridge the gap between the macro and the microcosm. Within the microcosm, the octahedron says, the octahedron is monad. There we go. There we go. Getting a delay all of a sudden. So, within the microcosm, the octahedron as monad becomes the creator of its own energetically bipolar sheath, bipolar as spirit and matter, by which it is able to descend further into the world of form. This polarity is represented by the dual interlaced tetrahedron, renowned in New Age sacred geometry as the Merkaba. Merka means light and spirit. Ba means body. Merkaba is actually a Zulu word for the soul. And it's dual, one tetrahedron point down to the personality and the other up to the monad, seems an apt representation for the soul. As mentioned earlier, this transformation from octahedron...
Francis, we're losing you.
Really?
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but at times you're breaking up. So.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. But we've had really good luck through all these webinars. I haven't had this problem yet, so somehow it's fitting that we do before we go out. Just keep me aware of if I'm gone, okay?
Just pause for a minute before you switch slides. Don't talk while you're switching slides, and I think we're good.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, as mentioned earlier, this transformation from octahedron to dual tetrahedron, which is illustrated here, is brought about by making each triangular face of the octahedron into a small tetrahedron.
We just lost you again, and Scott says, ask you if you're plugged into your computer. Your battery is low.
Actually, it had become unplugged, but it's back in, so that shouldn't be a problem now.
Okay, well, you were still breaking up.
So we'll just muddle. Yeah, that shouldn't actually create a breaking up. There's something in the internet connection creating that. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, this transformation from octahedron to dual tetrahedron is brought about by making each triangular face of the octahedron into a small tetrahedron, which seems to be a somewhat arbitrary step. But the results verify this method, for, as I mentioned before, the outer 8 points of these two interlaced tetrahedra coincide with the 8 dodecahedron not used to form the octahedron. Therefore, the 12 combined points of the octahedron and dual tetrahedron, the monad and soul, intersect with all the points of the cosmic dodecahedron, thus affirming humankind's link to the universal, the macroprosopas, or Adam Kadmon. It's interesting to note that in this context, HPB's statement that humankind is itself the third logos. finally, we physicalize the monad by connecting the vertices of the dual tetrahedron. So you see we're stepping into form here through this process, right? And a big gap, which is the cosmic dodecahedron icosahedron dual, which is a macrocosmic, steps down through their dual process and creates the octahedron. Then we have this dual tetrahedron shown here. And then that becomes physicalized by connecting the vertices of the dual tetrahedron. This gives an enclosing cube representing the personality and the physical plane. Interesting to note that the angles of the cube total 2160, which some of you esotericists might recognize as the number of years that it takes the equinoctial point to pass through one zodiacal sign. HPB says, right, so let's get a reader here and see how somebody else does with our connection.
Okay, Walter, will you please read for us?
Yes. The dodecahedron lies concealed in the perfect cube. The mystic meaning of this is that the 12 great transformations of spirit into matter, the 12,000 divine years, take place during the 4 great ages, or the first Mahayana, or the first Mahayuga. Beginning with the metaphysical and the suprahuman, it ends in the physical and purely human natures of cosmos and man.
Thanks, Walter. And that verifies that we're having some connection problems, but we'll just struggle on here. I'd like to finish this section on meaning and significance with a quote from Robert Butler's Sacred Geometry, which offers some alternative ideas on the progression of the lesser than the interconnection of all these Platonic solids, especially concerning the octahedron. He has a different interpretation. You know, these haven't been presented to us, these interpretations, by a master of wisdom like DK, but they're nonetheless fascinating, and we know that there is some sacred geometric connection that moves us, the causal, to the manifest. So we need a reader for this paragraph, please. This is a really good one. So pay close attention. So
Okay.
Robert Lawler at his best.
Asha, please go ahead.
Oh, hold on. I just walked away. Hold on a second. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes? Oh, okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. The interlocking tetrahedron is then seen as the yin and the yang, for the tetrahedron is a volume of threeness and is what? Is a volume of threeness and is therefore a primary symbol of a function accompanied by its reciprocal.
That's the two
The result of this
tetrahedrons.
harmonic interaction of opposites gives the cube, symbolic of material existence, the 4 states of matter, earth, air, fire, water. Both the cube and the interlocking
Okay, you're breaking
tetrahedron
up. I'm not hearing.
touch the dodecahedron. At the heart of this tetrahedron is the octahedron, and as the cube is a formation of its extremities, the octahedron symbolizes the crystallization, the static perfection of matter. It is the diamond, the heart of the cosmic solid, the transformed and clarified lens of light, the double pyramid. The outer progression, extending into vaster and vaster realms, demarcates the same progression, the same genesis, the icosahedron, the purusha, generating the dodecahedron, the prakriti, and within prakriti, the full play of manifested existence. The whole coagulation is begun by the secret seed, which contracts the circle, the infinite, undifferentiated spirit, into the icosahedron. The seed is phi, the fire of spirit. Whoa.
Thank you, Asha. Yeah, this, you could contemplate this for a while. I have. It's a beautiful progression. And, whether you believe that this Lawler has expressed that the octahedron is the seed of matter itself, what he calls the diamond, or whether you believe it's the monad, as expressed by Gordon Plummer, the overall holds true in our case, which is that, the dodecahedron-icosahedron dual works to form those, what might be called lesser Platonic solids that represent the microcosm. And it does so through the law of phi. Okay, so let's take a look at the next stage in DK's analysis, which is the stage of synthesis, of synthetic grasp, I should say, of the purpose of a symbol, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, of its true unified intent. This stage is not about attributes, rather it has to do with synthesis and unity, synthetic purpose and unified intent. Just as the first stage has to do with the physical plane, the second with the astral, and the third with the mental plane, this stage suggests we apply our intuition, thus lift our consciousness to even higher levels. And I tell you, if you could do it with any geometrical figure, it would be with this one, because it is known to represent higher levels. Notice too that this stage is threefold. The stage of the synthetic grasp, the purpose of a symbol, of its place in an... Yes.
We're getting a lot of garble in this. We can understand you, but it's very difficult. I'm not sure what the problem is.
Okay, well, we're approaching the end, so we'll just have to push through. And also a lot of what I'm saying is written here. So, if you can't hear me, you can read as I'm speaking, and it shouldn't be a problem. So we've got three stages. Stage of synthetic grasp of the purpose of the symbol, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, and of its true unified intent. So, what is the synthetic purpose or unified intent of the dodecahedron? And what is its place in an ordered manifesting plan? What single purpose characterizes this figure? Any ideas? Take a moment to consider, and we'll do our best with the audio for your response. Let me know if you get a response, but take your time.
Okay, I don't have anything yet, but I want you to know that we could hear Asha and we could hear Walter just fine. You're the only one we're having difficulty hearing.
Was that right? Well, that's unfortunate. There's really nothing I can do with that right now. I got a new modem because my other one conked, and it may be some problem with that. There's no way to analyze or fix that at this point. So we'll just have to muddle through. I'm glad that everyone else can hear each other. I may be the only one in this webinar that's unable to connect. So, but anyway, this giving you a little bit of time. Have you any ideas as to the synthetic purpose?
Okay, I don't see anything yet. Here we go. Please go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, I get a sense of a purpose of synthetic representation. In other words, there's the spiritual meaning represented in a physical form, and just being able to have that, really, you can just see that impression from the whole thing. like, in other words, meaning expressed in form, and that's a very meaningful purpose that goes into the spirit-matter duality.
Yeah, well, I only heard about half of that, but I think I got the gist. And it sounds like a lot of what we've been describing, which is the idea of spirit and form with the dodecahedron, icosahedron dual. Because certainly in determining the purpose, one must include the icosahedron. Thank you, Walter. Anybody else want to take a stab at this?
Not so far.
Hello, I just heard you, Biel, a little bit.
I said not so far.
Not so far, okay.
No stabs. Oh,
Okay, are you able to?
Here we go. We have a stab.
Okay.
Please go ahead, Malia.
I'm going to take a stab at this. I am not a sacred geometrist, but as I'm sitting here staring at the planes of this figure, I'm really struck by the fivenesses of it. And what that is bringing back into my memory is when John Burgess did the gematria and numerology of the Great Invocation. The summary numbers, if I recollect correctly, was a 5. And so there's a resonance taking place in my head which has no, I mean, it's just a resonance. I'm not capable of analyzing it or expanding on it any further.
Okay, were you able to understand her, Biel?
Yes, sort of.
Okay, here's the situation at this point, folks. It's going in and out in a regular pulsed rhythm, and I'm unable to understand your intent. I'm just grateful that we're towards the end of the webinar, but since if you're still able to understand each other, and so I'm sorry, Malia, I'm not going to be able to respond to that because I wasn't able to hear you.
No problem,
but
Frank.
if there's any other responses, let's just go ahead and speak those.
Okay, there weren't any, but you can hear me okay?
I can't. It's pulsing in and out, and it's not making any sense. I'm sorry.
Okay, I have something from Jeremy, but it's rather long. I think at this point, what I need to do is send you the comments that we're getting in for you to review later. Is that okay, Francis? Could you hear that?
Okay. I'm going to go ahead because I can't understand what people are saying, unfortunately. I'm going to go ahead and give you my ideas as to the synthetic purpose of the dodecahedron. I don't know if you can hear me understanding. We're just a few minutes from the end here. So the dodecahedron could be seen as the energy matrix of the universal mother, with all that this implies. Theosophically, this could be described as the shape of the material universe in the mind of the creative logos. This creative principle functions in accordance with the laws of phi, which are everywhere present in the interrelations of the Platonic solids. But the dodecahedron is actually one of two reciprocal transcendent principles, its dual, the icosahedron, being its hidden causal counterpart. Together they are Purusha and Prakriti, yin and yang, which, when reflected down into the world of matter, manifest as the cube and the octahedron, subject to the laws of generation governed by the square root of 2. Okay, the final stage in DK's criteria for analyzing a symbol is identification with the quality and purpose of the symbol as it is illuminated by the mind held steady in the light. This final stage brings into activity the brain as well as the mind. So let's attempt to identify with rather than merely reflect on the quality and purpose of the dodecahedron. We'll take exactly 1 minute to do this, starting now. Okay. Well, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar. As to the reading list, one viable extension of this course of 25 webinars could be found in Robert Lawler's Sacred Geometry, published by Timson Hudson in 1982. It's a really fascinating read, and its workshop sections make it an in-depth course of study. For instance, workshop number 9 deals with the interrelation of the Platonic solids that we explored today. I highly recommend this book, which is available online for free at the address you see there below, dodecahedron.com. Today's visualization comes from The Secret Doctrine. I've chosen this passage because it describes the interrelation of many of the numbers between 1 and 12. There will be an ohm before and after HBB's words. Examine the Mexican manuscript in the British Museum, number 9789, and you will find in it a tree whose trunk is covered with 10 fruits, ready to be plucked by a male and female, one on each side of it, while from the top of the trunk 2 branches shoot horizontally to the right and left, thus forming a perfect bough. The ends of the 2 branches, moreover, each bearing a triple bunch with a bird, the bird of immortality, Atman, or the divine spirit, sitting between the 2, and thus making the 7th. This represents the same idea as the sephirothal tree, 10 in all, yet when separated from the upper triad, leaving 7. These are the celestial fruits, the 10 born out of the 2, invisible male and female seeds, making up the 12, or the dodecahedron of the universe. The mystic system contains the central point, the 3, the 5, and the 7, the triangle in the square, and the synthesizing point in the interlaced double triangles. This is the world of the archetypes. The phenomenal world receives its culmination and the reflex of all in man. Therefore, he is the mystic square. In his metaphysical aspect, the tetractys, and becomes the cubion, the creative plane. His symbol is the cube unfolded, wherein 6 becomes 7, or the 3 crossways, and 4 vertically. And this is man, the culmination of the deity on earth, whose body is the cross of flesh, on, through, and in which he is ever crucifying the divine logos, or his higher self. The universe, says every philosophy in cosmogony, hath a ruler set over it, which is called the Word, or Logos. The fabricating spirit is its queen, which two are the first power after the one. Okay, well, time to pass out the virtual party hats, because that's it for this series on sacred number and geometry. I'll be hosting a new series starting next June entitled Exploring Core Ideas. This series, which will be interactive in the same way that these webinars have been, we will draw together teachings from the Blue Books, the Secret Doctrine, and other esoteric sources to explore topics like color and sound, Shambhala, Fohat, the Old Commentary, and the stanzas of Zahn. I think it'll be a fascinating ride. Notice that the Dragon of Wisdom is leading the way. Anyway, I hope you will all join me. Okay. Thanks to Brett, all 25 of these Sacred Geometry webinars will be available on makara.us. Neil, I bow to you 3 times, then blow a party whistle. I really couldn't have done this without you. Thank you all for attending, especially those of you who have been regulars throughout the series. And I hope to see you all again in June of next year. Okay, bye for now.
Thank you, Francis. You got a lot of thank yous, but you'll be able to read them when I send them to you later. Goodbye, everybody.